My name is Richard Hale. I'm 62 years old. And for 30 years, I was the chief financial officer of Midwest Industries, a Fortune 500 manufacturing company based in Chicago. My world was balance sheets, risk assessments, and capital allocations. I managed a department of 50 people and oversaw the movement of billions of dollars. My annual salary was $425,000, plus bonuses that could double that. But my real wealth was my family, or so I thought. My wife, Laura. We'd been married for 35 years. We lived in a 5,000 square foot Georgian colonial in Winnetka. Our children, Brian and Melissa, were my pride and joy. Brian, 34, was a venture capitalist. Melissa, 32, ran a high-end boutique in Lincoln Park. I had financed both of their dreams. Northwestern's MBA program for Brian, a $100,000 seed investment for Melissa's store. For Laura, nothing was too good. A new Lexus LS every other year. Trips to Paris, Milan, Tuscany. I was the silent provider, the steady hand. They called me the human calculator at work. Quiet, methodical, predictable. In the months leading up to my retirement, I noticed a shift, a coldness in the house. Laura was always on her phone. She'd end calls abruptly when I walked into the room. Brian and Melissa started asking pointed questions about my will, about the structure of my estate, about long-term care insurance. I dismissed it. I thought they were concerned about my well-being. My calm demeanor was my greatest strength and my greatest weakness. My retirement party was held in our backyard, a warm June evening. White tents, string lights, close friends and family. I was happy. I was thinking about the Airstream trailer I bought, the cross-country trip Laura and I had planned, the grandkids we hoped to have soon. I was making a speech, thanking everyone, when Laura walked up to me. She was holding a single, thick envelope. She had a smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. "Richard," she said. Her voice was like ice. "A retirement gift." I opened the envelope. Divorce papers. The words hit me like a physical blow. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. She leaned in close. Her whisper was for me alone. "I don't want to spend my golden years babysitting a retired old man." I stared at her. Then I looked past her. At our guests. That's when I saw him. A man I didn't recognize, leaning against the gate, smirking. My eyes found Brian and Melissa. They weren't surprised. They were watching me. Their expressions were a mix of pity and anticipation. "You knew," I said. It wasn't a question. Brian shrugged. "Dad, be reasonable. Mom deserves her happiness. And we have to think about our own futures. Your assets, it's a lot to manage." Melissa nodded in agreement. "Your portfolio is complex. Maybe it's better if it's managed by people who understand modern finance." The truth clicked into place with brutal, final clarity. This wasn't about happiness. It was a hostile takeover of my life's work. They saw me as a liquid asset, a fund to be drained, an old man to be managed and then discarded. They thought the human calculator would just compute the equation and accept it. I looked at the papers in my hand. Then I looked at my family, my former family. The calm that defined me my whole career settled over me. It wasn't resignation. It was a different kind of calculation. I folded the papers neatly. I slid them into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. "All right," I said, my voice perfectly even. "I'll sign." The party continued around me, but I was no longer there. I watched Laura laugh with a strange man by the gate. I watched my children celebrate my professional demise. They had no idea. They had just declared war on a master strategist. And they didn't even know they were on the battlefield. The silence in my study was absolute. The party was over. The guests were gone. I could still hear the ghost of laughter echoing in the halls. The same halls my children grew up in. Now it felt like a museum of a life that never really existed. I sat at my mahogany desk. A gift from Laura for our 20th anniversary. I opened the divorce papers. Page after page of cold legal language. Dividing assets. Assigning value. terminating a 35-year partnership. They wanted the house, the cars, 50% of my pension, alimony based on my peak earnings. They had done their homework, but their research was incomplete. You see, a CFO's job isn't just to manage money, it's to manage risk. And for the last 5 years, a quiet voice in the back of my mind, a voice I'd ignored, had told me to diversify, to protect myself. While Laura was shopping in Paris, while Brian was chasing flashy tech IPOs, while Melissa was designing her boutique, I was building a fortress, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, a blind trust that held my most valuable assets, a portfolio of cryptocurrency and private equity investments, all under a corporate veil, so complex. Even a seasoned lawyer would need a map to navigate it. The fortune they thought they were dividing was just the tip of the iceberg, the visible, taxable tip. 3 days later, I signed the papers. In my lawyer's office in the Loop, Laura sat across from me. She couldn't even look me in the eye. Brian and Melissa were there too. Their lawyers were smug. They thought they'd won. I signed without a word. I gave Laura the house in Winnetka. I divided the joint accounts. I agreed to the alimony. I handed over the stock portfolio I knew was about to tank. They left the office celebrating. I left with something more valuable, my freedom. The next morning, I disappeared. I canceled my phone number, deleted my social media. I told my few remaining friends I was traveling. I had one final asset they knew nothing about, a small, off-grid cabin on 10 acres of land near Bend, Oregon. I bought it for cash 5 years earlier, a quiet escape, a place to think. Now, it was my bunker. The first week was the hardest. The silence was deafening. Not the peaceful quiet of the forest, the roaring silence of abandonment. My phone, before I destroyed the SIM card, blew up. Desperate messages. Richard, we need to discuss the investment accounts. Laura, Dad, call me. It's urgent. The stock transfer isn't clearing. Brian, Daddy, where are you? We're worried. Melissa, the word Daddy felt like a knife twist. I didn't respond. I let the messages pile up. Then I threw the phone into Deschutes River, a symbolic burial. My grief was a physical thing, a hollow ache in my chest. I'd lost my family, but I hadn't just lost them. I'd lost the idea of them, the story I'd told myself for 35 years, that I was a good husband, a good father, that my provision was my love, and their love was my reward. It was all a fiction, but a CFO knows how to read a balance sheet, and the math was finally clear. My assets were gone. My liabilities were zero. It was time to build a new portfolio. From the ground up, I set up my command center in the cabin, 3 high-resolution monitors, a satellite internet connection faster than most cities, my trading terminals, my analytical software. For the first time in 30 years, I was trading for myself, not for a board, not for shareholders. For me, my experience was my edge. While retail investors chase hype, I look for value. Undervalued tech startups with solid fundamentals. Real estate investment trusts poised for growth. I even dipped back into crypto, but not the meme coins. I invested in the blockchain infrastructure plays, the picks and shovels. In 6 months, I doubled my off-book capital. In a year, I quintupled it. But money was just a scorecard. The real investment was in me. I started hiking the Pacific Crest Trail at dawn. I learned to cook. I grew a beard. I bought clothes from LL Bean instead of Nordstrom. I was becoming someone new, someone they wouldn't recognize. And then I met Clara. She owned a small bookstore in downtown Bend. She was 58, sharp, witty, with kind eyes that had seen their own share of pain. We met over a disagreement about John le Carré novels. Our first coffee lasted 3 hours. She didn't see Richard Hale, former CFO. She saw Richard, the man who was slowly emerging from the wreckage. She showed me that life could be simple, and that simple could be rich. We married at the courthouse a year later. No family, no fanfare, just us. It was the happiest day of my life. We adopted a little girl, Lily. She was 9. Her biological parents had lost their rights. She was shy. She'd been hurt. But she looked at me one night and called me Dad. It wasn't a title given out of obligation. It was a gift. I was building a real family, one based on choice, not on blood or financial obligation. For years past, my new fortune dwarfed my old one. We moved from the cabin to a 400-acre ranch. I bought a Cessna, citation to fly to my investment meetings. Life was full. It was authentic. Then the call came. It was my old lawyer, David Peterson. His voice was tense. "Richard, they're looking for you." "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Laura, Brian, Melissa, they're in trouble." He explained it all. Laura's new man, Marcus, had been a con artist. He'd drained her accounts and vanished. The stocks I'd given them had collapsed. Brian had invested everything in a fraudulent crypto scheme. He was facing bankruptcy. Melissa's boutique had failed. She was drowning in debt. "They're desperate, Richard," David said. "They're asking for help." I looked out the window of my study. Clara was teaching Lily how to ride a horse. Their laughter floated on the mountain air. "Tell them Richard Hale is unavailable," I said, my voice calm. The human calculator had run the numbers, and the result was final. The desperation from Chicago became a constant, low hum in the background of my new life. David Peterson, my lawyer, became my unwilling intermediary. He forwarded their messages, his voice a mix of professional duty and personal pity. "Richard, Laura has called 14 times this week. She's facing foreclosure on the Winnetka house. The alimony, it's not enough. She says Marcus took everything." I'd listen while watching Clara tend her garden. Noted, I'd say, Brian's situation is worse. He took out a second mortgage. He invested in a company called Cryptosphere. It was a Ponzi scheme. The SEC shut it down. He lost over $400,000. His wife left him. He's asking for a loan, just to get back on his feet. I'd absorbed this while helping Lily with her algebra homework. Understood. Melissa, her store is gone. The debt collectors are circling. She's asking for a job. Richard, any job. She says she'll do anything. I'd hear this while pre-flighting the Cessna for a trip to Seattle. My position is unchanged, David. They had hired a private investigator. A good one, but I had planned for this. My assets were held by a series of nested LLCs, and a trust based in Delaware. My primary residence was legally owned by a holding company called Pinecrest Ventures. To any investigator, Richard Hale was a retired CFO living on a modest pension in Oregon. The trail ended there. The billionaire in the ranch house was a ghost. A year passed. The messages grew more frantic, then slowly turned bitter. The pleas for help became accusations. "You owe us this. You're our father. How can you be so cruel?" The human calculator in me computed the irony. They had shown me no loyalty, yet demanded it unconditionally. They had valued me only for my utility, and now cursed me for being unusable. The final call from David came on a crisp autumn morning. "Richard, it's about Laura. She's in the hospital. Northwestern Memorial. A severe anxiety attack. The financial stress, it's taken a toll. She's asking for you." I felt a distant pang, not of love or guilt, but of a chapter closing with a definitive final thud. "Send flowers," I told him, my voice even, from the firm. "No name. Richard, for God's sake." "David," I interrupted, my tone leaving no room for debate. "The matter is closed." I hung up and walked onto the porch. Clara knew without asking. She came over and took my hand. Lily was inside, practicing a Chopin nocturne on the piano. The music was beautiful. It was real. This was my life now, not a relic from a past that had never truly existed. I decided it was time for one final communication. Not for them, for me, to close the ledger forever. I called David back. "David, I want you to send them a letter. One letter each. Identical. From your office." I dictated it slowly, precisely. "To Laura, Brian, and Melissa, you are mistaken. I do not owe you anything. The man you knew was a function, a provider. You terminated that function when you deemed it no longer useful. The calculation you made was based on flawed data. You assumed the asset had no value beyond what you could immediately liquidate. You were wrong. The asset appreciated substantially, but it is no longer available for your withdrawal. Do not contact me again. Any further attempts will be considered harassment and will be met with the full extent of the law. R.H. Should I sign your full name? David asked, his voice quiet. No. Initials only. And should I include anything else? Yes, I said. Include a photograph. That afternoon, we took a picture. Clara, Lily, and I on the porch of our home. The mountains were behind us. The sky was clear. We were dressed in simple, comfortable clothes. We were smiling, genuinely. On the back, I wrote a single line. The Hale family, Oregon, 2024. I didn't send it to hurt them. I sent it to free myself. It was the final entry in the ledger, the proof that the investment they had discarded had yielded a return beyond their comprehension. The silence that followed was absolute. The calls to David's office stopped. The letters ceased. It was over. I learned through a business contact months later that Laura had sold the Winnetka house at a loss. She moved to a small apartment in Evanston. Brian took a job as a mid-level accountant at a firm in Milwaukee, a significant step down from his venture capital aspirations. Melissa moved in with her mother. She was working as a receptionist. They had survived. They were living with the consequences of their calculation, and I was finally at peace. Today, I am 67 years old. My life is not what I planned. It is better. Lily is applying to colleges. She wants to be a veterinarian. Clara's bookstore has become a local institution. And me, I still trade. I still analyze. But now, the profits fund Lily's education. They help Clara expand her store. They ensure our future. The revenge wasn't in their suffering. It was in my peace. It was in the quiet joy of a family built on love, not obligation. It was in the profound, liberating indifference I finally felt. The greatest payback wasn't destroying them. It was realizing they no longer had the power to destroy me. The human calculator had run the final equation, and the result was contentment. If you felt the satisfaction of justice served, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps bring these stories to light. Thanks for watching.